The rain had been falling for hours, relentless and heavy. It drummed against the rooftops of Willow Creek, a small town nestled in the heart of rolling hills and dense forests. The once clear skies were now a deep gray, almost black, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The river that ran through the town had already swollen beyond its banks, turning calm waters into a raging torrent. Trees bent under the force of the wind, their branches clawing at the air like desperate hands. Emma Carter tightened, her jacket around herself, as she stepped onto the muddy trail leading toward the river. She had come to Willow Creek seeking solitude, a break from the constant noise of her life, a life filled with meetings, phone calls, and endless expectations. For years, she had carried the weight of being one of the wealthiest women in the country, the heir to a tech empire worth billions. But today, none of that mattered. Today, she wanted nothing more than to feel the simplicity of nature. Even if it meant braving the storm dot, she hadn't expected the weather to turn so quickly. The forecast had warned of showers, but this was something else entirely. Still, Emma pressed on, determined not to let the rain ruin her escape. Her boots sank into the soft earth with every step, and the cold wind bit at her cheeks. She reached a bend in the trail where the river roared below, its surface churning violently. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying, a reminder of nature's raw power. As she stood there, watching the water surge past, a deafening crack echoed through the valley. Emma turned just in time to see a massive tree topple over, its roots ripped from the saturated ground. It crashed into the river with a thunderous splash, sending waves rippling outward. Before she could react, the ground beneath her feet gave way. One moment, she was standing firmly. The next, she was tumbling down the steep embankment, sliding uncontrollably toward the water. Emma hit the icy current with a gasp, the shock of the cold stealing her breath. The river seized her instantly, pulling her along with brutal force. She flailed, trying to find anything to hold on to. Her fingers scraped against rocks and debris, but nothing offered purchase. Panic surged through her as she realized how strong the current was, how powerless she was against it. "Help!" She screamed, her voice swallowed by the roar of the floodwaters. "Somebody help me!" But there was no one around. The trail above was empty, lost in the curtain of rain. Emma fought to keep her head above water, her arms thrashing wildly. Just when she thought she couldn't hold on any longer, her hand brushed against something solid, a tree branch jutting out from the bank. With the last of her strength, she grabbed it and clung tightly, her body dangling precariously over the rushing water. Her chest heaved as she struggled to catch her breath. Every muscle in her body screamed in protest, and the cold seeped into her bones. She tried calling out again, but her voice came out weak, barely audible even to herself. All she could do was hang on and hope someone would come before her grip. Failed. Not far away, Jake Miller trudged through the downpour, his hood pulled low over his face. He had spent most of the morning helping his father reinforce the barn against the rising waters. Now he was heading back home, his clothes soaked and his boots caked with mud. At 17, Jake had grown accustomed to hard work. Life in Willow Creek wasn't easy, especially for a family with little money to spare. But despite the hardships, Jake had always found joy in simple things: the smell of fresh hay after a summer rain, the sound of birds waking at dawn, the quiet beauty of the countryside. As he neared the river, a faint cry caught his attention. At first, he thought it might be the wind or some distant animal trapped in the storm. But then he heard it again, clearer this time. "Help!" Jake froze, his eyes scanning the chaotic scene before him. That's when he saw her, a woman clinging to a tree branch, her face pale with fear. Without hesitation, he dropped his bag and sprinted toward the riverbank. The water churned dangerously below, carrying logs and debris with frightening speed. Any misstep could send him tumbling into the current. "Hold on," Jake shouted, his voice barely audible over the storm. He scrambled down the slippery slope, his hands digging into the mud for balance. When he reached the edge, he crouched low and extended his arm toward the woman. "Grab my hand." Emma looked up, her wide eyes locking onto his. She hesitated for a split second, then reached out, her fingers brushing against his. Jake leaned further, stretching until his fingertips finally closed around her wrist. With a grunt of effort, he pulled her closer, inch by agonizing inch. Branch groaned under Emma's weight, threatening to snap at any moment. Jake knew he didn't have much time. Summoning all his strength, he hauled her upward, dragging her safely onto the bank just as the branch broke free and disappeared into the river. For a moment, they both lay there, panting and shivering, the rain still pouring down around them. Emma rolled onto her side, coughing up water and trembling uncontrollably. Jake sat up, wiping rain from his face as he checked to make sure she was okay. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. Emma shook her head, though her lips quivered too much for her to speak. Tears mixed with rainwater streamed down her face, partly from relief, partly from sheer exhaustion. After a few moments, she managed to choke out a single word. Thank you." Jake smiled weakly, his own body aching from the effort. "You're welcome," he said simply. Then, without waiting for another response, he stood and offered her his hand. "Come on, we need to get you out of this rain." Emma hesitated only briefly before taking his hand. He helped her to her feet, steadying her as she swayed unsteadily. Together, they made their way up the embankment and back onto the trail. Each step felt like a battle, but Jake stayed close, ready to catch her if she faltered. By the time they reached Jake's house, the storm showed no signs of letting up. It was a modest structure, weathered but sturdy, surrounded by fields that stretched endlessly into the distance. Inside, the warmth of a crackling fire greeted them, a stark contrast to the freezing rain outside. Jake led Emma to a chair near the hearth, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. His mother, Mary, bustled over with a cup of hot tea, her kind, eyes filled with worry. "What happened?" she asked, glancing between Jake and Emma. "She fell into the river," Jake explained. "I found her hanging onto a branch. She's okay, though." Mary nodded, handing the tea to Emma. "Drink this, it'll warm you up." She studied Emma for a moment, noting the expensive hiking gear peeking out from beneath the blanket. "You're not from around here, are you?" Emma shook her head, clutching the mug tightly. "No, I'm just visiting. I got caught in the storm while hiking." "Well, you're safe now," Mary said with a reassuring smile. "We'll take care of you until the weather clears." Emma murmured her thanks, her mind still reeling from the ordeal. She glanced at Jake, who was standing nearby, dripping wet but seemingly unfazed. There was something about him, an unassuming confidence, a quiet strength that struck her deeply. Despite everything, he had risked his life to save hers without a second thought. As the fire crackled softly in the background, Emma felt a strange sense of gratitude wash over her. In that moment, she realized how lucky she was not just to have survived, but to have been saved by someone like Jake. Little did she know, this encounter would change both their lives forever. The storm outside showed no signs of stopping, but inside Jake's home, the warmth of the fire and the kindness of his family created a comforting shelter. Emma sat wrapped in the blanket, sipping her tea slowly. The heat from the mug seeped into her hands, chasing away some of the chill that still clung to her bones. She glanced around the room, taking in its simplicity, the worn furniture, the faded curtains, the shelves lined with books and handmade trinkets. It was a humble space, yet it radiated a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. Jake stood by the window, watching the rain pound against the glass. His clothes were soaked, his hair plastered to his forehead, but he didn't seem to mind. He turned back to Emma after a moment, his expression thoughtful. "Are you feeling any better?" he asked, his voice calm and steady. Emma nodded, setting the mug down on the table beside her. "Yes, thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been there." Jake shrugged, brushing off her gratitude as if it were nothing. Anyone would have done the same. But Emma knew that wasn't true. Not everyone would dive into a raging river to save a stranger. There was something special about Jake, something genuine and selfless. It set him apart. She wanted to say more, to express just how much his actions meant to her, but words failed her. Instead, she offered him a small smile. "Still, I owe you my life." Jake didn't respond right away. He looked at her for a moment, studying her face as if trying to piece together who she really was. Finally, he said, "You don't owe me anything. Just be careful next time, okay? That river can get dangerous." Emma nodded again, though her thoughts drifted elsewhere. She wondered how much Jake and his family truly understood about her, or whether they even cared. In their eyes, she was probably just another traveler passing through Willow Creek, someone who had gotten unlucky in the storm. They couldn't possibly know the truth about her life, or the immense wealth she carried with her, hidden beneath the surface like the river itself. Over the next few days, Emma stayed at the miller's home while recovering from her ordeal. Mary insisted she rest and regain her strength before venturing out again, and Emma didn't argue. The truth was, she didn't want to leave, not yet. There was something about this place, this family, that made her feel grounded in a way she hadn't felt in years. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't worried about board meetings or stock prices or the endless demands of her empire. Here, she was simply Emma, a woman who had been saved by a boy brave enough to risk everything for her. During her stay, Emma learned more about Jake and his family. Their lives were far removed from the luxury she was accustomed to. Jake spent most of his days helping his father tend to their farm, working tirelessly under the sun. Despite their hardships, they never complained. Instead, they found joy in the little things. A shared laugh over dinner, the satisfaction of a job well done, the beauty of a quiet evening by the fire. One afternoon, while Jake was repairing a broken fence post, Emma approached him. "Can I help?" she asked, gesturing toward the tools scattered on the ground. Jake looked up, surprised. Sure, I guess. But you don't have to." "I want to," Emma replied firmly. "You saved my life. The least I can do is lend a hand." Jake hesitated for a moment, then handed her a hammer. Together, they worked side by side, pounding nails into the wood and steadying the post until it stood firm. As they worked, Emma began asking questions about Jake's life, his dreams, his goals, his plans for the future. "I've always wanted to be an engineer," Jake admitted, pausing to wipe sweat from his brow. "I love figuring out how things work, building stuff that actually makes a difference." But he trailed off, his voice tinged with regret. "But what?" Emma prompted gently. Jake sighed, shaking his head. "College is expensive. My family doesn't have the money for it, and scholarships are hard to come by. Sometimes it feels like no matter how hard I try, I'll never get there." Emma listened intently, her heart aching for him. She saw so much of herself in Jake, the determination, the hunger for something greater, but also the frustration of being held back by circumstances beyond his control. If only he knew who she really was, what she could offer him. Yet she kept her identity hidden, unsure of how he would react if he found out. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Emma sat alone in the living room, lost in thought. On the television, a news report flickered to life, catching her attention. A reporter stood outside a sleek office building, speaking into a microphone. Behind her, a large banner read, "Billionaire heiress missing. Search continues for Emma." Carter. Emma froze, her breath catching in her throat. She stared at the screen, where a photo of herself appeared alongside the reporter's words. The resemblance was unmistakable. Her heart raced as she glanced toward the doorway, wondering if anyone else had seen it. Moments later, Jake walked in, towel drying his hair after a shower. He stopped short when he noticed Emma's expression. "What's wrong?" he asked. Concern etched on his face. Emma hesitated, unsure of how to respond. She gestured toward the TV, where the news report continued to play. Jake followed her gaze, his eyes widening as he recognized the image on screen. Slowly, he turned back to her, comprehension dawning in his features. "Is that you?" he asked quietly. Emma nodded, bracing herself for his reaction. "Yes," she admitted. "That's me." For a long moment, Jake said nothing. He simply stared at her, processing the revelation. Then, to her surprise, he chuckled softly. "Wow, I guess I should have figured it out sooner. You're not exactly dressed for hiking." Emma managed a weak laugh, though her nerves were still frayed. "I'm sorry, I didn't tell you earlier. I didn't want you to treat me differently." Jake shook his head, his expression softening. "It doesn't change anything. You're still the same person who nearly drowned in our river. And honestly, I don't care about your money. I'm glad you're okay." His words brought tears to Emma's eyes. She had expected judgment, maybe even resentment, but instead, Jake's response was filled with understanding and grace. It was a reminder of why she had fallen in love with Willow Creek, and with him, in such a short time. As the days passed, Emma began to open up more about her life. She told Jake and his family about the pressures of running a global company, the constant scrutiny from the media, and the loneliness that often came with her position. To her relief, they listened without pity or envy, treating her story as simply another chapter in her journey. In return, Jake shared more about his aspirations. He confided in her about the struggles he faced, not just financially, but emotionally. Growing up in a small town like Willow Creek, it was easy to feel trapped, as if the world outside was moving forward while he remained stuck in place. Emma listened intently, her admiration for him growing with each word. One evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the stars, Emma made a decision. Turning to Jake, she said, "I want to help you." Jake frowned, confused. "Help? Me with what?" "With your dream," Emma explained. "You deserve a chance to pursue engineering, to build the future you've always imagined. Let me pay for your education. Consider it repayment for saving my life." Jake's eyes widened, and he immediately shook his head. "No, I can't accept that. It's too much." "It's not charity," Emma insisted. "Think of it as an investment. You have potential, Jake, more than you realize, and I believe in you." Her words struck a chord deep within him. For so long, he had doubted himself, convinced that his dreams were out of reach. But hearing Emma speak with such conviction reignited a spark of hope inside him. Still, he hesitated. Accepting her offer felt like admitting defeat, like giving up on his ability to succeed on his own. "I'll work for it," Jake said finally. "If you're serious about helping, let me earn it. Give me a job at your company during summers. Let me prove that I'm worth the investment." Emma smiled, moved by his determination. "Deal," she said, extending her hand. Jake took it, sealing their agreement with a firm handshake. Over the following weeks, Emma arranged everything: tuition payments, enrollment forms, even a part-time internship at her company. She did it all discreetly, ensuring that Jake's pride remained intact. Meanwhile, Jake threw himself into preparing for college, studying late into the night and practicing math problems until his head spun out as the time came for Emma to leave Willow Creek. She felt a pang of sadness. This place, these people, had changed her in ways she hadn't anticipated. They had reminded her of the importance of humility, of connection, of using her resources for good. On her last day, Jake walked her to the edge of the property, where a car waited to take her back to the city. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "For everything." Emma placed a hand on his shoulder, meeting his gaze. "Thank you, Jake, for reminding me of what really matters." With that, she climbed into the car and drove away, leaving behind a boy who now dared to dream bigger than ever before. Though miles separated them, their lives were forever intertwined, a bond forged in the storm, strengthened by trust, and destined to shape the future in ways neither of them could yet imagine. The years passed quickly, and Jake Miller found himself standing on the threshold of a life he had once only dreamed about. With Emma Carter's help, he enrolled in college, leaving behind the familiar fields of Willow Creek for the bustling city where her company was headquartered. It was a world unlike anything he'd ever known, towering skyscrapers, crowded streets, and people rushing to and fro with purpose. At first, Jake felt out of place, like a fish swimming upstream in a river too fast to navigate. But he reminded himself why he was there, to build a better future, not just for himself but for his family. College wasn't easy. The coursework was challenging, and Jake often stayed up late into the night, studying equations and diagrams that seemed impossibly complex. He missed the simplicity of home, the quiet mornings feeding chickens, the smell of fresh hay, and the comforting rhythm of farm life. Yet every time doubt crept in, he thought of Emma's words. "You have potential, Jake, more than you realize." Those words became his anchor, keeping him grounded when the pressure threatened to overwhelm him. During summer breaks, Jake returned to Willow Creek, where his family welcomed him with open arms. His father patted him on the back proudly, marveling at how much Jake had grown, not just physically, but mentally. "You're turning into quite the engineer," his dad said one evening as they sat together on the porch. "Your mom would be so proud." Jake smiled softly at the mention of his mother, who had passed away a few years earlier. Her memory still lingered in the warmth of their home, in the laughter shared over meals, and in the lessons she had taught him of kindness and resilience. "I wish she could see me now," Jake replied quietly, "but I think she'd approve." When summer ended, Jake returned to the city, trading the peaceful countryside for the hum of urban life. Each year, he interned at Emma's company, gaining hands-on experience that no textbook could provide. The internship wasn't glamorous most days, involved sorting through data, running simulations, or shadowing senior engineers, but Jake didn't mind. He soaked up every bit of knowledge, asking questions and observing how problems were solved in real time. Emma kept an eye on Jake's progress from afar, occasionally stopping by to check in during his internships. She admired his work ethic and his ability to adapt to new challenges. There was something refreshing about Jake's approach. He didn't shy away from hard work, and he always asked thoughtful questions that showed he was eager to learn. Over time, their relationship evolved from mentor and protégé to something closer to friendship. One day, near the end of Jake's third summer internship, Emma invited him to join her for lunch at a small cafe near the office. It was a rare break for both of them. Emma's schedule was usually packed with meetings, and Jake spent most of his time buried in projects. As they sat across from each other, sipping coffee and sharing sandwiches, Emma leaned forward slightly. "How are things going?" she asked, her tone warm but curious. Jake shrugged, though a smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. "Good. Really good, actually. I've been working on this renewable energy project. It's kind of experimental, but I think it has potential. Emma raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Renewable energy? That sounds ambitious. Tell me more. So Jake did? He explained how he had been inspired by his childhood in Willow Creek, where power outages were common during storms. He described his idea for a compact solar-powered generator designed specifically for rural areas, capable of providing electricity, even in remote locations. It wasn't fully developed yet, but he believed it could make a difference if perfected. As Jake spoke, Emma listened intently, her expression thoughtful. When he finished, she nodded slowly. That's impressive. Jake, you're thinking outside the box and addressing a real need. Have you shown this to anyone else? Not really, Jake admitted. It's still rough around the edges. I figured I'd wait till it was closer to being ready. Emma shook her head firmly. Don't wait. Share your ideas early. People might see value in them before you even realize it yourself. She paused, considering her next words carefully. In fact, why don't you present your concept to the board? We have a meeting next week, and I'd love for you to share your work. Jake blinked, startled. The board? Me? I'm just an intern. You're more than that, Emma interrupted gently. You're someone with vision. Don't sell yourself short. For a moment, Jake hesitated. Presenting to the board felt like stepping onto a stage far too big for him. What if they dismissed his idea? What if he embarrassed himself or worse, let Emma down? But then he remembered why. He had come this far because he refused to let fear hold him back. If Emma believed in him, maybe he could believe in himself too. All right, he said finally, nodding. I'll do it. The days leading up to the presentation were nerve-wracking. Jake spent hours refining his pitch, practicing in front of a mirror until his voice sounded confident instead of shaky. He created slides showcasing his prototype, highlighting its potential impact and the research behind it. Despite his preparation, however, he couldn't shake the anxiety gnawing at him. On the day of the meeting, Jake arrived at the conference room early, clutching his laptop tightly. The board members filed in one by one, their sharp suits and polished demeanors making him feel even more out of place. When Emma entered last, she gave him an encouraging smile before taking her seat. Thank you all for letting me present today. Jake began, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach. He launched into his pitch, explaining the problem his invention aimed to solve and walking the board through his design process. He showed photos of his prototype, shared graphs illustrating its efficiency, and emphasized its potential applications in underserved communities. To his surprise, the room remained silent, the board members listening attentively without interruption. When he finished, Emma was the first to speak. Thank you, Jake. That was excellent. Any questions? The discussion that followed was lively, with board members offering feedback and suggestions. Some expressed skepticism, questioning whether the technology could scale effectively. Others praised Jake's ingenuity, calling his idea innovative and timely. By the end of the meeting, the consensus was clear. They wanted to move forward with development, allocating funds to refine the prototype further. As the meeting concluded, Emma approached Jake, her eyes shining with pride. Well done, she said simply. You earned this. Jake exhaled deeply, relief flooding through him. I couldn't have done it without your support. Emma shook her head. You did the hard part. All I did was give you a chance to shine. Over the following months, Jake threw himself into perfecting his invention. He worked closely with a team of engineers, learning from their expertise while contributing his own insights. Slowly but surely, his prototype took shape, evolving from a rough concept into a functional device. Along the way, he faced setbacks, components that failed, calculations that needed revising, but he tackled each challenge with determination. Back in Willow Creek, Jake's family followed his journey with pride. His father called regularly to check in, asking detailed questions about the project and offering advice whenever he could. "You're doing great, son," he said during one call. "Keep pushing forward." Meanwhile, Emma continued to play a guiding role in Jake's life, offering advice and encouragement when needed. Their bond deepened as they collaborated, their mutual respect growing stronger with each passing day. Though their backgrounds were vastly different, they shared a common goal, using innovation to improve lives. By the time Jake graduated from college, his solar-powered generator had gained significant attention within the industry. It was featured in trade publications, discussed at conferences, and hailed as a breakthrough in sustainable energy solutions. Companies began reaching out, eager to partner with him to bring the product to market. At his graduation ceremony, surrounded by classmates and professors, Jake scanned the crowd until he spotted Emma sitting a few rows back. She caught his eye and gave him a subtle thumbs up, her smile radiating approval. In that moment, Jake realized how far he had come, not just academically, but personally. He had started as a boy, clinging to dreams too big for his circumstances. And now he stood as a man ready to change the world. After receiving his diploma, Jake walked off stage to thunderous applause. As he made his way back to his seat, he whispered under his breath, "This is just the beginning." And indeed, it was. Jake's life after graduation moved at a pace he could barely keep up with. His solar-powered generator project, once a rough idea scribbled in a notebook, had transformed into a fully fledged product ready for the market. The company Emma owned fast-tracked its development, investing heavily in research and manufacturing. Jake was given a leadership role in the project, overseeing a team of engineers and designers who worked tirelessly to refine every detail. It was a dream come true, but also overwhelming. At first, Jake struggled to adjust to his new responsibilities. He had always been a hard worker, but managing a team required skills he hadn't yet mastered. There were meetings to lead, budgets to approve, and deadlines to meet. Some days, he felt like an imposter, wondering if he truly deserved to be in charge. But whenever doubt crept in, he reminded himself of how far he had come from a small farm in Willow Creek to heading one of the most innovative projects in renewable energy. He owed it to himself and to Emma to give it his all. Emma noticed Jake's initial struggles and stepped in to offer guidance. "Leadership isn't something you're born with," she told him one evening as they reviewed progress reports in her office. "It's something you learn. Trust your instincts and don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it." Her words stuck with Jake, and over time, he began to find his footing. He learned to delegate tasks effectively, trusting his team to handle their parts while he focused on the bigger picture. He also discovered the importance of listening, not just to his colleagues, but to potential customers. During testing phases, Jake traveled to rural areas where electricity was scarce, speaking directly with people who might benefit from his invention. Their stories of children unable to study after sunset, of farmers struggling to power irrigation systems reinforced his belief that this project wasn't just about technology. It was about making lives better. As production ramped up, excitement around the generator grew. News outlets began covering the story, praising Jake as a rising star in the field of sustainable energy. Interviews followed, and soon Jake found himself featured in magazines and on television. At first, the attention made him uncomfortable. He wasn't used to being in the spotlight, and he worried that people would see him as someone he wasn't, a self-made success rather than a boy who had been given a chance by someone else. But Emma encouraged him to embrace it. "You earned this," she said firmly during one of their late-night strategy sessions. "Your hard work got you here. Don't Let anyone, including yourself, forget that. With Emma's support, Jake gradually became more confident in sharing his journey. In interviews, he always acknowledged the role his family and Emma had played in his success. "I didn't do this alone," he would say. "Without the people who believed in me, I wouldn't be standing here today." Despite the growing recognition, Jake never lost sight of what mattered most, the impact his invention could have. When the first shipment of generators arrived in a remote village in Africa, Jake insisted on traveling there to oversee the installation. Seeing the joy on people's faces as lights flickered on for the first time filled him with a sense of purpose he couldn't put into words. A farmer hugged him tightly, tears streaming down his face, saying, "Now my family will have light, even when the sun goes down." Moments like these reminded Jake why he had chosen this path. Back home, life continued to change rapidly. Jake rented a small apartment near the city center, filling it with simple furniture and books about engineering and sustainability. On weekends, he visited Willow Creek, reconnecting with his roots and spending time with his father, who still managed the farm. These trips grounded him, reminding him of the values instilled in him by his upbringing. No matter how successful he became, Jake vowed never to forget where he came from. Meanwhile, Emma watched Jake's growth with pride. She had seen glimpses of greatness in him from the moment she pulled him out of the river, but now that greatness was undeniable. Still, she knew challenges lay ahead. Success often attracted jealousy, and not everyone would celebrate Jake's achievements. One morning, Emma called Jake into her office. Her expression was unusually serious, and Jake immediately sensed something was wrong. "What is it?" he asked, taking a seat across from her desk. Emma hesitated before answering. "There's been some trouble. A rival company is accusing you of stealing their intellectual property." Jake's heart sank. "What? That's impossible. My design is completely original." "I know," Emma said quickly, holding up a hand to calm him. "But they're trying to discredit you, claiming your prototype is too similar to one of theirs. It's nonsense, of course, but we need to address it before it gets worse." Jake leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. "Why would they do this? We haven't even launched yet." "It's a tactic," Emma explained. "They're trying to scare us off, delay your launch until they can release their own version. They think if they throw enough mud, some of it will stick." Jake clenched his fists, frustration boiling inside him. "This isn't fair. I've worked so hard for this. How can they just accuse me of something I didn't do?" Emma placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We'll fight back, together. The truth is on our side, and we'll prove it." Over the next few weeks, Jake and Emma worked tirelessly to counter the accusations. They hired lawyers to investigate the claims, gathering evidence to show that Jake's design was unique and developed independently. Emma used her influence to rally public support, issuing statements that highlighted Jake's integrity and dedication to innovation. Social media buzzed with messages of encouragement, as people who had followed Jake's journey rallied behind him. Through it all, Jake remained determined but shaken. The smear campaign took a toll on him emotionally, making him question whether he was cut out for this level of scrutiny. One night, after a particularly grueling day, he sat alone in his apartment, staring blankly at the wall. His phone buzzed repeatedly with notifications, but he ignored them, feeling too drained to respond. A knock at the door startled him. Opening it, he found Emma standing there, holding 2 cups of coffee. Without waiting for an invitation, she stepped inside and handed him one of the cups. "You look like you need this," she said gently. Jake accepted the coffee, but didn't drink it. "I feel like I'm drowning again," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Like that day in the river. Only this time, no one's there to pull me out." Emma sat down beside him, meeting his gaze steadily. "That's not true. You're stronger than you think, Jake. Remember how far you've come? This is just another challenge one we'll overcome together. Her words struck a chord deep within him. Slowly, Jake nodded. You're right. I can't let them win. Not after everything we've done. The turning point came when Emma's legal team uncovered emails proving the rival company had fabricated the allegations. The documents showed they had deliberately targeted Jake's project, hoping to sabotage it before it gained traction. Armed with this evidence, Emma went public, exposing the truth and calling out the unethical behavior. The backlash against the rival company was swift and severe, forcing them to retract their claims and issue a formal apology. When the dust settled, Jake emerged stronger than ever. The ordeal had tested him in ways he hadn't anticipated, but it had also reinforced his resolve. He realized that success wasn't just about achieving goals. It was about persevering through adversity and staying true to oneself. In the months that followed, Jake's solar-powered generator launched to widespread acclaim. Orders poured in from around the world, and communities without access to reliable electricity began experiencing newfound freedom and opportunity. For Jake, the satisfaction of knowing his invention was making a difference outweighed any accolades or financial rewards. One evening, as he stood on the balcony of his apartment overlooking the city skyline, Jake reflected on his journey. From the muddy banks of Willow Creek to the boardrooms of a global corporation, he had traveled a long and winding road. And though the destination had changed, one thing remained constant: the belief that kindness, determination, and resilience could move mountains. As the city lights twinkled below, Jake smiled softly to himself. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew he was ready to face them, not because he was invincible, but because he had people like Emma who believed in him. And sometimes that was all anyone needed to keep moving forward. The success of Jake's solar-powered generator brought him fame and recognition, but it also opened doors he hadn't expected. Invitations to speak at conferences and universities poured in, along with requests for interviews and partnerships. At first, Jake hesitated, unsure if he was ready to step into the role of a public figure. But Emma encouraged him to embrace the opportunity, reminding him that his story could inspire others. People need to hear about your journey, she told him one afternoon as they reviewed plans for an upcoming speaking tour. Not just because of what you've achieved, but because of how you got here. You're proof that determination and hard work can overcome even the toughest obstacles. Jake nodded, though he still felt uneasy. I'm not used to being in the spotlight. What if I say the wrong thing? Emma smiled reassuringly. Just be yourself. That's all anyone wants: authenticity. Trust me, people will connect with your honesty. Taking her advice to heart, Jake began preparing for his first major speech. It was scheduled to take place at a prestigious engineering conference in Chicago, where industry leaders and students alike would gather to discuss innovations in renewable energy. The thought of standing before such a large audience made Jake nervous, but he reminded himself why he was doing this: to share his story and encourage others to pursue their dreams, no matter how impossible they seemed. On the day of the conference, Jake arrived early, pacing backstage as he rehearsed his speech in his head. When it was finally time to go on, he took a deep breath and walked onto the stage. The room fell silent as hundreds of eyes turned toward him. For a moment, Jake felt frozen, overwhelmed by the weight of the moment. Then he remembered Emma's words, "Be yourself." Clearing his throat, Jake began. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jake Miller, and I'm here today to talk about innovation, not just in technology, but in the way we think about ourselves and our potential. He paused, scanning the crowd. When I was growing up, I lived on a small farm in a town called Willow Creek. Life there was simple, but it wasn't easy. My family didn't have much money, and college seemed like a distant dream. but something inside me refused to give up. I believed that if I worked hard enough, I could create a better future for myself and for others. As Jake continued, his nerves melted away. He spoke passionately about his struggles, his rescue from the river, and the unexpected friendship that had changed his life. He described the challenges he faced while developing his invention, including the smear campaign that nearly derailed everything. By the time he finished, the audience erupted into applause, many rising to their feet. Afterward, dozens of people approached Jake, eager to shake his hand or ask questions. Some shared their own stories of hardship and perseverance, thanking him for giving them hope. Others expressed interest in collaborating on future projects. For the first time, Jake realized the impact his journey could have beyond his immediate circle. It could inspire countless others to believe in themselves. Over the next few months, Jake traveled extensively, delivering speeches and meeting people from all walks of life. Each experience deepened his understanding of the world and reinforced his commitment to making a difference. He visited schools, encouraging students to pursue careers in STEM fields. He attended community events, listening to the needs of underserved populations and brainstorming ways to address them. And he returned frequently to Willow Creek, ensuring his roots remained firmly planted even as his branches reached higher despite his growing responsibilities. Jake never forgot the lessons he had learned along the way. Hard work, humility, and gratitude became guiding principles in both his personal and professional life. He stayed close to his father, who remained his greatest supporter, and kept in touch with Emma, whose wisdom and guidance continued to shape his decisions. One evening, after returning from a particularly grueling trip, Jake sat down with Emma for dinner at her home. They had grown closer over the years, their bond strengthened by shared experiences and mutual respect. As they ate, Jake reflected on how much his life had changed since that fateful day in the river. "I never imagined I'd end up here," he said, gesturing vaguely at the city skyline visible through the window. "Sometimes it feels surreal." Emma chuckled softly. "Life has a funny way of surprising us. But you've earned every bit of it, Jake. Don't forget that." Jake smiled, though his expression turned serious after a moment. "There's still so much to do, so many problems to solve. Sometimes it feels like I'm barely scratching the surface." "That's the nature of progress," Emma replied thoughtfully. "No matter how far we go, there's always more work to be done. But don't let that discourage you. Every step forward matters, even the small ones." Her words resonated deeply with Jake. He knew she was right. Change didn't happen overnight, and every effort counted. Still, the scale of the challenges ahead weighed heavily on him. Climate change, poverty, inequality, these were monumental. Issues that couldn't be solved by a single invention or individual. Yet Jake refused to let the enormity of the task paralyze him. Instead, he focused on what he could control, using his skills and resources to make a tangible difference. With Emma's support, Jake launched a new initiative aimed at empowering young innovators from underprivileged backgrounds. Called Bright Futures, the program provided scholarships, mentorship, and access to cutting-edge tools and training. Its goal was simple yet ambitious: to level the playing field and give talented individuals the opportunities they deserved. The response to Bright Futures was overwhelming. Applications poured in from across the country, each one telling a unique story of resilience and ambition. Jake personally reviewed many of them, moved by the determination and creativity displayed by these aspiring engineers and scientists. Selecting finalists was difficult, but seeing their excitement when chosen made the process worthwhile. Among the first cohort of participants was a young woman named Lily, whose passion for robotics caught Jake's attention. She came from a low-income neighborhood in Detroit, where access to advanced education was limited. Despite these challenges, Lily had built several prototypes using scrap materials and online tutorials. Her ingenuity impressed Jake, and he took a special interest in mentoring her. "You remind me of myself," he told her during one of their sessions. "You have the drive and the talent. Don't let anything stand in your way." Lily beamed, her confidence visibly boosted by his words. "Thank you, Mr. Miller. I won't let you down." Watching Lily thrive filled Jake with pride, reminding him of the ripple effect kindness could have. Just as Emma had believed in him, he now had the chance to pay it forward, creating a chain reaction of opportunity and inspiration. As bright futures gained momentum, Jake's solar-powered generator continued to transform lives worldwide. Villages once shrouded in darkness now buzzed with activity long after sunset. Farmers irrigated their crops more efficiently, children studied late into the night, and businesses thrived thanks to reliable electricity. News stories highlighted these changes, showcasing the human impact behind the technology. But amidst the accolades and achievements, Jake remained grounded. He often thought back to the lessons he had learned in Willow Creek, the value of simplicity, the importance of family, and the power of community. These principles guided him as he navigated the complexities of his newfound success. One weekend, Jake returned to Willow Creek for a rare break. Walking through the familiar fields and forests, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. This place, with its quiet beauty and humble charm, would always be home. Sitting on the porch with his father, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Jake realized something profound. "It's not about the awards or the recognition," he said quietly. "It's about the lives we touch. That's what truly matters." His father nodded, smiling warmly. "You've always understood that, son. Never lose sight of it." As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Jake felt a renewed sense of purpose. No matter where life took him, he vowed to stay true to his values, to use his success not for personal gain, but to uplift others. Because in the end, that was the legacy he wanted to leave behind, a world brighter than the one he had found. Years passed, and Jake Miller's name became synonymous with innovation and generosity. His solar-powered generator had reached millions of people in remote areas, bringing light to places that had known only darkness for generations. The Bright Futures program flourished, expanding to include participants from around the globe. Young innovators who had once felt trapped by their circumstances now found themselves equipped with the tools and confidence to dream bigger than ever before. Jake watched with pride as these young minds developed solutions to some of the world's most pressing problems: clean water systems, affordable housing designs, and sustainable farming techniques. But success didn't change Jake. He remained the same humble man who had grown up on a small farm in Willow Creek. Though he lived in a modest apartment in the city, he often returned to his hometown, where life moved at a slower pace. There, surrounded by familiar faces and landscapes, he could recharge and reflect on how far he had come. His father, now older but still spry, loved hearing stories about Jake's travels and achievements. "You've done good, son," he would say, clapping Jake on the back. "Your mom would be so proud." Emma Carter also stayed close to Jake, their friendship deepening over time. She admired the way he balanced ambition with humility, using his success not for personal gain, but to help others. In many ways, Jake reminded her of her younger self, the version of herself that believed wholeheartedly in the power of kindness and hard work. Watching him grow into a leader who inspired countless lives filled her with a sense of fulfillment she hadn't expected. One summer evening, Emma invited Jake to her home for dinner. As they sat together on the porch, sipping tea and watching the sunset, Emma turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever think about what's next?" she asked. Jake tilted his head, considering the question. "What do you mean?" "I mean, Your work has already changed so many lives. But is there more you want to accomplish? A new challenge, maybe? Jake smiled softly, gazing out at the horizon. There's always more to do, he said. The world is full of problems waiting to be solved. Sometimes it feels overwhelming, like I'll never finish. But I guess that's part of the journey, to keep moving forward, no matter how big the task seems. Emma nodded, her eyes twinkling with admiration. That's why I admire you, Jake. You don't shy away from challenges. You face them head on, with courage and determination. Her words warmed Jake's heart, but they also sparked an idea. Over the past few months, he had been thinking about ways to expand the impact of Bright Futures. While scholarships and mentorship programs were valuable, he realized that systemic change required more than individual efforts. It needed collaboration on a larger scale. What if he could bring together governments, corporations, and communities to tackle global issues collectively? Inspired by this vision, Jake began drafting plans for a summit, a gathering of leaders from various sectors dedicated to addressing sustainability and inequality. He called it the Global Innovation Forum. Its goal was simple: to create partnerships that would amplify the efforts of individuals and organizations working toward positive change. When Jake shared the idea with Emma, she immediately offered her support. This could be groundbreaking, she said. People need a platform to connect and collaborate. If anyone can make it happen, it's you. With Emma's backing, Jake threw himself into organizing the forum. It wasn't easy coordinating. Schedules, securing funding, and ensuring diverse representation proved challenging, but Jake thrived under pressure. He drew strength from the belief that this event could spark real change, uniting people from different walks of life to work toward a common goal. The day of the Global Innovation Forum finally arrived. Held in a sprawling convention center, the event attracted attendees from all corners of the globe: scientists, policymakers, entrepreneurs, activists, and students eager to contribute to meaningful discussions. Jake stood backstage nervously, adjusting his tie as he prepared to deliver the opening speech. "You've got this," Emma whispered, giving him an encouraging smile. "Just remember why you're here." Taking a deep breath, Jake stepped onto the stage. The room fell silent as hundreds of eyes turned toward him. For a moment, he felt the familiar flutter of nerves, but then he remembered Emma's advice. Be yourself. Smiling warmly, he began. "Thank you all for being here today," he said, his voice steady. "Each of us comes from different backgrounds, with unique experiences and perspectives. Yet we share something important: a desire to leave the world better than we found it. That's why we're here, to collaborate, to innovate, and to create solutions that will benefit everyone, not just a few." As Jake spoke, he recounted his own journey from the muddy banks of Willow Creek to the bustling cities where his inventions now transformed lives. He emphasized the importance of teamwork, urging attendees to look beyond their differences and focus on shared goals. By the time he finished, the audience erupted into applause, many rising to their feet. Over the course of the 3-day forum, participants engaged in lively discussions, brainstormed ideas, and formed partnerships aimed at tackling issues ranging from climate change to education access. Success stories emerged, including a collaboration between a tech company and a rural community to develop low-cost internet connectivity, and a joint initiative between governments to fund renewable energy projects in developing nations. 4. Jake, the highlight of the event, came during the closing ceremony, when Lily, the young robotics enthusiast from Detroit, delivered a heartfelt speech. Standing confidently on stage, she thanked Jake and the Bright Futures program for believing in her potential. Then she announced her latest project, a robotic arm designed to assist farmers in harvesting crops more efficiently. The crowd cheered loudly, moved by her determination and ingenuity. Afterward, Jake approached Lily, tears glistening in his eyes. "I'm so proud of you," he said, pulling her into a hug. "You're proof that anything is possible when you refuse to give." "Up?" Lily grinned, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "And you're proof that one person really can make a difference. Thank you, Mr. Miller, for everything." In the weeks following the forum, its impact rippled outward. Collaborations forged during the event led to groundbreaking projects, while media coverage inspired countless others to join the movement for positive change. Jake received messages from people around the world, thanking him for creating a space where ideas could flourish and connections could form. Though the forum marked a significant milestone, Jake knew it was just the beginning. There was still so much work to be done, so many lives to touch. But he faced the future with hope and determination, buoyed by the knowledge that he wasn't alone. Together with Emma, his family, and the growing network of changemakers he had helped inspire, he was ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. On a crisp autumn morning, Jake returned to Willow Creek for a quiet visit. Walking along the riverbank where his journey had begun, he paused to watch the water flow gently past. The storm that had nearly claimed his life years ago now seemed like a distant memory, replaced by the calm beauty of nature. Behind him, footsteps crunched softly against the leaves. Turning, he saw Emma approaching, her hands tucked into the pockets of her coat. "Mind if I join you?" she asked. Jake shook his head, smiling. "Not at all." They stood side by side, gazing at the river in comfortable silence. After a moment, Emma spoke. "It's funny, isn't it? How one moment can change everything." Jake nodded, his thoughts drifting back to that fateful day. "If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here. None of this would have happened." Emma chuckled softly. "Don't sell yourself short. You did the hard work. All I did was give you a chance." "But you gave me more than that," Jake replied earnestly. "You believed in me when no one else did. That made all the difference." Emma placed a hand on his shoulder, her expression warm. "We make our own luck, Jake, but sometimes it helps to have someone cheering you on." They lingered by the river for a while longer, reflecting on how their lives had intertwined through fate and choice. For Jake, the journey had been long and challenging, but every step had been worth it. He had started as a boy clinging to dreams, too big for his circumstances, and now he stood as a man whose actions had touched countless lives. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the landscape, Jake felt a profound sense of gratitude. Life had tested him, shaped him, and rewarded him in ways he couldn't have imagined. And though the road ahead would undoubtedly hold new challenges, he faced it with unwavering resolve, because in the end, Jake knew what truly mattered: kindness, connection, and the belief that even the smallest act of courage could spark a chain reaction of change.